was how I got them to sign off of this project. Like, I have three, I think, at least fairly obvious what we call intertextual connections between Matthew and 1st and 2nd Samuel. The first obvious one is in Matthew 2:6, where we have the story where Herod wants to know where this new king of the Jews is going to be born, because, the wise men have been by and he's kind of freaked out that they want to see the king of the Jews, and he's like, oh, that's me. And they're like, no, like, we've seen his star rising in the east. This is clearly not you, right? And so he's trying to figure out where this guy's going to be born so he can kill him. Okay? If you didn't know that story already, that's the point. And the quote in Matthew comes, oh, it'll be in Bethlehem, because as it says in Micah 5:1 and 3 and 2 Samuel 5:2, that's where the Messiah will come from. So that's the first fairly obvious one, and everyone's like, okay, great. Then there's another one in Matthew 12. Okay, we have this story. It's on the Sabbath. Jesus' disciples are picking some grain, and the Pharisees get after them, like, oh, you're breaking the Sabbath, rah, rah, rah. And then Jesus says, haven't you read what David did? Which goes bing, bing, bing. Okay, that must probably be part to some story in 1st or 2nd Samuel, which it is. And we know here, this is interesting, we know here that Matthew for sure is aware of the actual text in 1 Samuel 21:1 and 6, which is where the story takes place. Because Mark has the same story. I don't know if you've taken New Testament survey, you go through the Gospels, you realize, oh man, they're saying a lot of the same things over and over again. Okay, yeah, they do, but they say them differently. And in Mark 2:22, now there is some confusion. This is also why 1st and 2nd Samuel is a lot of fun to work with, because I love that Alicia is here and laughing at things. It's great. The actual, the way the text, it's kind of a messy compilation of texts. And there are sometimes some confusion about names and who's actually the priest or not. Is it the dad or the son? But anyway, in Mark's gospel, Mark says that Abiathar is the priest, but in 1 Samuel 21:1 and 6, it is not Abiathar, it's Ahimelech. And Matthew seems to know this. He seems to be aware of that text that says that, and so he does not say what Mark says, but changes the name, right? Which indicates to me, and others, luckily I'm not alone, okay, that Matthew probably has access to and knowledge of the text of 1st and 2nd Samuel. And the last one, the one that I would like to share some stuff with from today, is in Matthew 21. And this might be a providential thing, because we had talked about when I was going to do this presentation. And it's been kind of moved around quite a bit, and then it just so happened that it's today, the Friday before we celebrate Palm Sunday. And if you know anything about this, right, this is Jesus' triumphal entry, right, Palm Sunday. So maybe this was supposed to happen, right, this is the day. But as I will try to hopefully persuade you, that passage as well, the triumphal entry, has a bunch of what we call intertextual connections to 2 Samuel, particularly 2 Samuel 5:8, and also some other passages to the Absalom Revolt. You'll see these, by the way. Do you all have a handout? Okay, hopefully you do. You'll see. That's for your benefit, because I realize not everyone just has, in the back of their mind, yes, I know exactly what these words are. So I've been trying to help you out a little bit with a handout to see, make sense of things, and I will direct your attention to that eventually. Now, in total, my PhD research investigates 36. I came up with 36 potential intertextual connections. That's for you, David. That means, right, quotes, allusions, or echoes. That's what they sometimes are called, between the Gospel of Matthew and 1st and 2nd Samuel. So that's a lot. There's a lot more there. I was surprised by this, right? I had to start with 3 to try to convince someone to write something on this. And I ended up looking at 36. Now, not all of them are, I would say, valid. Okay, that's fair, right? That's part of my methodology too, my contribution, right, is to come up with a method by which you look at these potential links and establish whether the author probably intended this or not. Because people can see all kinds of crazy things in the Bible. Did you know that? People say all kinds of crazy things about the Bible, right? And we want to try to have something in place that makes sure that we're not just seeing things or, imposing things into the text. So I want to share with you today from Matthew 21. Okay, I hope to show you that, or how Jesus' entry into Jerusalem, and then after he enters into Jerusalem, he goes into the temple, how those events where he heals the lame and the blind actually reverse how David in the Absalom Revolt exits Jerusalem, and how David also had some, not healing of the lame and blind, but something opposite. Okay? So Jesus does these types of things. What I hope, more than anything, however successful I am in doing that specific piece, I hope this is at least a takeaway, because this is what has made me such a big fan of the Gospel of Matthew. Because I think that in Matthew 13:52, we have a really good sort of description of who the author of this Gospel actually is. A lot of people will go to the passage where Jesus goes to Levi the tax collector and he starts following him. I'm not saying that's not there, but I think this is even truer of who the author of the Gospel is. I think Matthew, I hope to persuade you that this is true, that Matthew is this scribe, a teacher who has been discipled in the nature of the kingdom of the heavens, and who is like this householder, right? This master of a house who brings out of his storeroom all these treasures, old and new, because this is what he does. Goes back to the Old Testament, pulls something out. Then he pulls something from over here, and from over here, and from over here. And then he weaves those things together into a beautiful and oftentimes surprising story. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. One person. Woo! Okay, so let me set the setting for us a little bit. We are starting with Matthew 21 and the triumphal entry. Jesus has finally made it to Jerusalem, okay? The place he has already prophesied he will meet his end. Of course, as he's also said, only to be raised on the third day. Now, as he is entering into the city of Jerusalem, Jesus is seated on a donkey and on a colt. I don't know if you noticed this in the Gospel of Matthew. Apparently Jesus is riding on two beasts somehow. I don't really know how that happens, right? In Mark it's one. Matthew's like, no man, there are two. So in my opinion, I didn't put it on there because I might not be serious enough, but I'll have to, David will know. Jean-Claude Van Damme was famous for doing the splits in the movies, right? So maybe the donkey and the colt on the side. I don't know how he get in there, but either way. Two animals, which Matthew is explicit about because two animals are mentioned specifically in the book of Zechariah 9:9. And Matthew goes out of his way to make us aware that that is the kind of Messiah that Jesus is, one described in Zechariah 9:9. Now I put in parentheses also Isaiah, because that's probably also there. And of course they're welcoming him as the son of David. And you're like, yeah, okay, we know this, Mark. Great. Zechariah